Golf Central on YouTube is brought to you by the new Chrome Tour golf ball from Callaway.
We have got an update to bring you on the landscape of the game as news came out today from the PGA Tour. So let's take a closer look as the Player Advisory Committee released an executive summary for proposed changes to field sizes, playing privileges and pace of play that, if approved, would take place for the 2026 season. Membership had been given a brief outline of these proposed changes a couple of weeks ago in Las Vegas meeting, but the details were laid out today. So let's take a closer look. Here are some of the key takeaways. Field sizes for open events will be reduced from 156 to 144 and even 132 or 120 when necessary. Only the top 100 in the FedEx Cup standings will get exempt status for the following season, which is down from that top 125. PGA Tour cards will only be awarded to the top 20 players on the Korn Ferry Tour instead of the top 30. And open qualifying, of course also known as Monday qualifying, will be reduced or eliminated at regular season events with fewer than 144 players. So for more, let's welcome in Golf Channel senior writer, that is Rex Hoggard, who has been covering this story since the very beginning. Rex, a fair few things to touch on here, but I imagine the biggest takeaway will be the reduction of tour cards as of 2026.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And if you go through that memo, 17 pages of it, there was one phrase that really stood out to me. And it seems to me this is at the heart of this exercise for the PGA Tour. It was, quote, coming up with an ideal field size. And it starts with the idea that is less more. And at least the collective answer from the Player Advisory Council through now is yes, less needs to be more. If you look across the board, field sizes in the majority of PGA Tour events will be reduced in 2026 if this proposal is approved. And that starts with, let's say, the Sony Open. Early in the spring, prior to daylight savings times, that would be reduced to 120 player fields. And even in the summertime, when you have a lot of daylight, those fields would go down from 156 to 144. As a result of this, there's going to be fewer tour cards. Essentially, according to the memo, there'll be about 20 to 25% fewer tour cards starting in 2026 because of this. If you look right now, there are 208 fully exempt members on the PGA Tour. That number would be reduced to about 160.
Okay, so that's a relatively significant change, Rex. I mean, you've sort of listed out the what, and we've been through what these changes might be. I guess the big question is why. You have mentioned a little bit there about, saving time when it comes to darkness, not returning for play. But why did the pack end up going to these conclusions?
It's really fourfold on this one if you look at it. And the first one is pretty clear, as you pointed out. It's pace of play, pace of play, pace of play. We've talked about this for a long time, but the memo pointed out that 28% of this year's events had at least one round that didn't finish because of darkness. And this goes directly to pace of play. And they feel like by reducing field sizes, that would improve. There's also the element here that you would keep events on schedule. This goes directly to pace of play. You wouldn't have so many Saturday cuts because they didn't finish up on Friday night. And that kind of goes to the storytelling that the tour wants to get behind. There's also the element that if you reduce field sizes, you create better opportunities for those players who do have cards. You give them a better chance of having success. And then finally, you would create a better product. That seems to be the whole point of this exercise for both the fans, the players, the media partners, and certainly the corporate partners.
Okay, I mean, Rex, you've covered the PGA Tour and the Player Council for a long time. There was a time really not so long ago that getting rid of playing opportunities would have been absolutely unthinkable. Now the players are recommending it. Are you surprised by this evolution?
I'm stunned by it, to be honest with you. And I can't tell you how happy I am that I'm coming on before Jim Gallagher, because something tells me he's not going to agree with what I heard from a lot of players. But I spoke with a handful of players this morning, and most of the players that I talked to agreed that this needed to happen, and that some of them even told me that it's long overdue. But to your point, if we were having this conversation just 5 years ago, the pushback from players would be incredible. Not only are you losing playing opportunities, but you're losing dramatically many playing opportunities, between 20 and 25%. That would have been unheard of 5 years ago. But I think it speaks to where we're at right now in golf. Everything that's happened the last 3 years with the invention of Live Golf and sort of the unstabilizing effect that has had. Private equity now is involved with the PGA Tour. I think the players, at least the ones I talked to today, understand that if the tour is going to move forward, it needs to reinvent its product, and it has to start with this.
Yeah, more competitive, more compelling, Rex. And I suppose you could make the argument, really, that with fewer tour cards, it does make it more cutthroat. So therefore, there may well be more competition. And do you think that's a good thing for the sport and its fans?
I think this goes directly to what we talked a lot about last year. When you heard about the signature events, there was talk of, oh, the meritocracy of the PGA Tour, they're going to lean into this. We're going to get the top players together more often at the biggest events. This kind of takes that to the micro, if you want to be honest about it. This takes it to the full field events, and you give these players the best opportunity to go out and perform. Now, the idea is there's going to be fewer playing cards, but those players that do have the cards will have a better opportunity because they'll know exactly where they're going to be playing. They'll know exactly the events they'll be playing in, and they won't have to scramble, for example, in an opposite field event with dramatically fewer points. Now, there was one caveat, some small print that goes along with these lines, and this proposal also would change the number of points that are awarded let's call it middle of the pack finishes at signature events. We're talking about between 8th place and 30th place to let that match up better with what a finish similar in a full field event would be. They feel like that brings both sides closer together.
Okay, so pros and cons really in all of this, Rex. I suppose just finally, now that we've got the proposals in place, it's looking like a 2026 target. What are the next steps in making this happen?
The final policy board meeting for the PGA Tour is next month at the RSM Classic, and they will essentially have 3 options. One, they'll be able to approve this proposal as is. That seems like the most likely options. They can reject this proposal, which doesn't seem likely at all, considering how many resources, how much time, how much effort was put into this. Or, and this is definitely an option, they can approve this with some tweaks. You look at this memo coming out today, I think it was by design. It's very much a trial balloon, let's call it. Allow the membership to take a really, really deep dive, digest this, and get back to the play directors on the policy board, and maybe they make a couple of adjustments, but it seems inevitable this will get pushed through.
Okay, Rex, well, you are the man and with all of the latest news across all of these topics, so we appreciate your time, and we will no doubt be getting an update from you on this very soon.
Thanks.
Well, let's just take a closer look at the proposed field changes coming up in that 2026 season. Most of these changes have been made, you heard Rex say it there, to assure that Darkness will not suspend play during an early round. So you see most of the non-signature events are going to be reduced by 12 players, as will all additional field events. The 2 events that will see the biggest reduction in field size, that'll be the Players and the Sony Open. Both will be reduced from 144 to 120. There'll be a handful of events like the American Express, though, that will not see any field reductions. So for more, let me welcome in our friend and colleague Jim Gallagher Jr., 5-time winner on the PGA Tour. Jim, this is going to get mixed reaction, I'm sure, but as a player, what is your initial thought on the news that's come out of the pack today?
I would say if you were in the top 50, you love it. And if you're outside the top 50, you're not going to love it. And I always hated the fact of taking opportunities away. Are we maybe limiting a future star access from some of these college players? I'm okay, I guess, with reducing some of the fields, but they keep talking about competition. But the signature events don't have cuts in most of them. So to me, I think you've got to have cuts in the signature events. And if you want to increase a few spots there, great. So that's the mixed part of it. I'm very shocked. I'm like Rex. I'm shocked this went through. You always wonder who's making the decisions, and they're usually top players who are usually, on the policy board for the most part are exempt, and they're not, I know they're thinking they're concerned about the whole body of things, but it gets down to slow play. We'll get that in a minute, but I think that's the whole key to this is why they've maybe reducing these. I get it early on in the year. It is tough when it gets dark. You want to finish on Friday. You want to make the cut, but I think there's got to be cuts in the signature events. If you want to really truly have competitiveness, I think that's where they got to hit it as well.